George, I want to say thank you for coming, and then just tell me about your life.
Oh, wow. Well, I want to first off probably say I dedicate all this information and everything that I've done in my life to the elders that had gone to the boarding schools and that have gone through the colonialization period, the survivors of the war on us, Washishu, Lake Tahoe area, Nevada and California. Uh, all of this stuff that I'm giving out is the truth, and it was given to me through oral tradition. So, like I said, I want to be completely as honest as I can to all of you, all of those that are going to be listening to this, because it's so important that we return back to the truth of who we are on this earth and why we came here. So, well, it's interesting that we're doing this video and this information, documentation, because for so many years I was told by my old people when I was a little kid not to tell anybody who I was, because they had what is called heart assassins looking for us, and if I was to tell them who I was, they would get rid of me through drugs or killing me or drug or women, anything they could to just get me away from what I'm supposed to be doing in life. So now that I'm here in 2024 and the spirits are telling me, it's time to speak up and say what you need to say, now I'm going to tell my story. And the story I like to begin with is, before anybody was here on earth, the animals, the plants, air, and water were already created. The Creator created this magnificent place that we're supposed to live on. But what was missing was a representation of the voice of those on earth. Animals, plants, air, water needed somebody to speak on their behalf when they couldn't speak for themselves. So the Creator told our deity, Nentashu we call her, she's a great-great-grandmother nature spirit, been here since the beginning of time. They say she's so beautiful, long hair, and when we die, we go to her, and then we go into this void, and we go to her, and then she takes us back to the village where all of our people are in the beginning of time. So this is why I'm so animate in retaining all of this oral history, because when I die, I want to go to Nentashu with a clean mind, clean body, and pure heart. And this is my job. I'm supposed to return to the circle and return to the heart. Teach people this. So, from my very first beginning of my remembering, the very beginning of my memory is I was out in the stars. I'm sitting there, and they hear these people talking, and they tell me it was a galactic council, like these deities from ancient people, and they're talking to somebody down there, and I'm in space, and I look down there, and there's this little blue circle planet down there, and I noticed the voices were coming from there. And so I'm sitting there listening, and these elder council was listening to them, and they were talking to them. And those people down there were saying, we need help. This is going on. This is happening to us, and we need to have a voice. So I'm sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden, I look over, and the elder council person looks over at me and says, are you ready? And I said, yes. And as soon as I said yes, I was inside my mother's body in a hospital on Earth. I remember going inside because I remember after I remember being in the sky with the stars and the planets, the next moment I remember being inside of a place that was comfortable. I felt at peace, but at times it was pink looking, and other times it was dark pink. So I think it was day and night inside my mom's belly. And when I was born, when I came out, I remember seeing 3 people, and they were looking at me. And I came out, and it was a bright light, and I saw this room. Didn't know it was a room at a time, but when they came out, I could just see this stuff. And all of a sudden, they put me someplace, and then my mom and them left. And I find out later to my mom that was an incubator. I was born too early. I was premature. And so by being born premature, they held me in the incubator. And they had me there for a little over a month. But you know, my earliest remembrances was seeing people walk by me, and every once in a while they would stop and reach in and touch me and care for me. But then they would go out their business. So here it was, I'm laying there for a little over a month, and it just felt like I was okay. And my mom used to say she didn't know why we weren't so bonded, because she tells me to do something and I still make up my mind what I want to do. It's not like I do it because you're my mom and I'll just do anything you tell me. I'm my own person, and I think about the things I think about from my own heart. And so I've always followed that. And so after a month or so, they came and got me, took me home. And she told me, she said, yeah, you know, you was a really quiet baby, you know. She said, when you got a little older and you could talk, you didn't talk much. She said, but then one day, and I remember this day too, I was about 4 or 5. She said, all of a sudden you just started talking. You know, we couldn't shut you up. And I knew why too, because I wanted to know things. I wanted to, you know, communicate to everybody. And for probably, I don't know how long after that I was talking, I went to her and we're talking, and she said something to me, and I said, how come there's no love in the world anymore? How come people talk bad to each other? And she said, oh, son, it's the world is different now. You can't, people aren't like that anymore. You have to be something else. And so it was really hard for me to hear that, because I came to Earth for a reason. My purpose being out in the stars, and when the Galactic Council told me, you ready? I came here with my purpose. And my purpose in life was to be what I remembered since the beginning of my time. Meaning I must have been, they say I've been here 567 times. That's what I'm told through the galactic consciousness. So I could understand that, because here I remember what plants are, I can remember what a rock felt like, I can remember what a fish felt like, I can remember what a tree felt like in life. So they're my family. So I remember these things, so I feel like everything's family. So for a little while longer, I lived amongst people and listened to them and felt what they were. But then after a while, I shut down. I think it was because I started hanging around with the old people, and I would ask them things and tell them things, and they would say, wow, you know things that not many people know, and why do you ask that question? I said, well, because I feel it. And so from there, they used to tell me, well, you're just like the old people, but you have to watch out who you talk to. So our advice for you is to not tell anybody who you are. So at 7 years old, I shut down. And people always wondered how come I don't tell them the truth. Because they can't. I can't tell you the truth because then I'll tell you who I am and why I'm here. And the old people says don't do that because of this. And so I shut down and quit talking, quit telling people things. But let me back up a little bit, because as I'm telling you this, I remembered sitting with the old people, and one of the elders told me a story about before Europeans came to our land, that we were up on a mountain called Babiba, down below there. They call it Job's Peak now in Gardnerville, Nevada. And the Washoe people, Washishu is what my tribe is called, Washishu, Washoe. But they told me this story that was when we ceremony every year, once a year, our family, different families, 7 of them, live in different parts of the territory around Lake Tahoe, north, south, east, and west. And so once a year, we'd come together and have a ceremony below this mountain. And anyway, we call them the Tumosha, head men. And the head men all came together and were having ceremony. And this one ceremony, all of a sudden this Ayush Mosh, we call him, hairy-faced man. He come walking out of the canyon, Woman Canyon, walking down towards our ceremony camp. And the old-timers could hear him. And this person dressed in a white dress, long white dress, was walking towards us, and he was talking our language, and he asked if he could come into the circle. So the old-timers invited him into the circle. And this Ayush Mosh came in and he sat down with us. You know, that man told us who he was, where he came from, what happened to him, what his people did to him, and what we were to expect to happen to us, and what we were to be prepared for. And so after he told us all these things, he excused himself and left the circle and went back towards the mountain and disappeared. So we sat there and contemplated what we were to do. And I know we didn't decide right at that moment. When I say we, I feel like I was one of those representations of those head men that were sitting there, because the memory is too familiar than to be just being told the story. Because what had happened at one of our council is they said, well, what we're going to do now to survive, if this people are going to come here and destroy our identity, which means to take the heart away from the people of who we are, that we need to put our medicine to sleep, our identity. So that's what we did. But we also told each other that we were going to come back. We were going to return back to Earth after the long sleep. And we call that reincarnation. That's what I hear in the words of people. And so this is what had happened. So when people came to our land and they influenced our people and killed our people and did all these things to us, they thought they were killing the original people. They were just killing the shell of our people. And so when they felt like they got rid of us, you know, like they did a lot of tribes, they wiped out a lot of tribes in this country, that when they feel like they got rid of us, that we that went to sleep with our medicine, we're going to wake up. And here it was, 1962, when I was born. When I was born this way, I was born with all this memory that I have now. I just have to live it again and experience everything again to reacquaint myself with the story that I am. Remember my heart memory cells. And that's what I had done. When I was born, I knew I was different. I knew I had something to offer, that I was special, and there was something great about why I was here on Earth. But I could never really say it. And I got to be about 7 years old. My father used to take me out into the mountains when I got to walk and hang with him. And we were funny because if we were hunting or we were fishing or we were gathering stuff, all of a sudden I'd see something and I'd ask him, what is that? And he'd say, son, let's sit down and I'll tell you. So all of a sudden he'd sit me down and we'd start talking, and all of a sudden we would be in the stars. He would be telling me a story that I remembered because I was out in the space again. I remember, I look at him, he was just a silhouette, just shoulders and a head. And I'm seeing stars and planets behind him, and then I kind of see myself and I'm the same thing. And he was telling me the story about what this thing was that I seen and how we were to look at that. And so it was a memory that he kept giving to me. So this is how I knew that I was sitting out in space listening to the Galactic Council, because every time my dad sat me down and told me a story after I was born and on Earth, I would go out to space and I would be listening to him tell the story. So it's like I was being um, uh, fulfilled in the memory of my identity, but it was happening to me on earth so that I can live on earth with those that were like me and I was like them, so that I can tell them who it is they are. You know, this was my purpose. Return the heart back to the people, return everybody back to the circle of life, which now, as I think about it now, we all have forgotten. So when I realized that I had been reincarnated, and the old people told me that to not tell anybody who you are and to live my life until someday I got to the future when I could tell the stories. Because these heart assassins, we call them, those scouts that were looking for those of us with the heart, they needed to get rid of us so we wouldn't affect the people or get them to remember who they are, so this country can make slaves out of everybody, make the world slavery. So I didn't tell anybody anything for this whole time. But as I was living, the feeling always has come over me that there was so much things going wrong, so many hard things, that it was the hardest thing for me to hold on to this information. And every once in a while someone would say, "Oh, you think you're special?" And I would say, "I don't think." You know, just to let them know my confidence in myself is I don't think I'm special, I know I'm special. So I would just be. And so I noticed that really kind of teed people off, you know, they really didn't like to hear that because they had forgotten. And so my whole life had to do with study, learn about this, learn about that. And the whole time I was learning and studying to be a being human on earth, I could see them. I could see etherical beings. You know, I could see eyes in trees. I could see eyes in dirt. I could feel something next to me and I know it's there, even though nobody else could see it. So I always knew something was really special about what gifts that I've had. And all the old people used to tell me that. So here I was, born into the family I'm born into, and as I started to grow up and started to go to school, I remember what my mom told me the very first time I went to first grade, and they sent me on the bus. But before I went on the bus, my mom says that, like the weekend before, she says, "Oh, you're going to be going to school, you're going to have fun and stuff." And I'm thinking, I'm not going to go to school. I like where I'm at, I like what I'm doing. But she said, "Oh, you're going to have friends there and stuff like that. You know, you're going to have fun." And for me, I didn't know why I didn't want to go to school. So I agreed with her. Got my new clothes and stuff and went to school. And after that first day of school, they dropped me off with the bus, school bus, and I walked home. My mom was waiting for me. And when I got in the house, she sat me down and they made me a sandwich, and we sat there, and she said, "So, how was your first day in school?" I said, "It was okay." She said, "You have fun?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I always remember this because you went quiet, you went silent." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "When you went silent, all of a sudden you looked up at me and you said, 'Do I have to go again tomorrow?'" And that's been the career of my going to school, was not wanting to go to school. So from first grade, I don't know if we call it intelligent, but I was very conscious that I knew that when I went to school or went to Bible school, that they were trying to talk me into something that I didn't believe. So I just really didn't want to hear it. They didn't talk like my old people that talk truth and love and consciousness. These people were trying to convince me of something, and using food and games and stuff like that to make me feel like I was going to like it when I didn't like it. So from first grade all the way to fifth grade, I ditched school. My mom didn't find out until after fifth grade that I was ditching that whole time. I just learned enough to read and write in my life. I never really learned a whole lot in school, but I did learn how people treat you. And they was mean to me, trying to force me to do things. And so just my experiences was always wanting to go with my old people, wanting to ditch school. So my mom said, "What did you do the whole time you were ditching?" Well, I'd wait till you went to work, hide behind the hill. When you went to work, then I'd come up the hill, go in the house, eat some cereal, watch little cartoons. And then after the cartoons went off the TV around 10 o'clock or so, then I'd have to go and visit the old people. And the old people back then, would sit in front of the house in the morning sun to stay warm. Then they would go in the side of the house about noontime, and then they'd be sitting in the back of the house in the evening time, afternoon. So I would just sit with them, listen to stories, listen to talk stories. And I learned so much history, so much knowledge about our people and what we did and what they did and what they experienced. And so I did that all the way till 5th grade. And it was so interesting too, because them old people never told on me. They never told my mom or dad that I wasn't going to school. So I always appreciated that. And all my friends were 70, 80, 90-year-old people. So when I got older, turning into my teen years, a lot of them started dying off. So I was losing my friends. And it was hard for me because I couldn't really make any more friends, because the younger generation didn't know what I knew. They didn't listen to their old people. They went to school and they got conditioned to where they didn't think that information was important and that they didn't have to listen because they were kids. We don't have to do this till we get older. We don't have to be responsible till we get older. And so that's why I know that a lot of my aunts and uncles and older people that don't know this information, how come they don't know? Because they didn't pay attention. And I did, so now I know this information. So let's say in my early teens, back into my elementary school, the one thing that I really did remember the most was getting paddled by the teachers. And we had a teacher named Mr. Lynch. And we all know where that name came from, lynching. He was part of the family that practiced lynching people, hanging them in the tree. Anyway, this teacher, there's a young Native girl that used to be in our class, and me and another guy in the Natives, and she would always cuss the teacher out. Every day she'd come to school and she'd cuss him out. And so he'd make me and the Indian guy and her stand up, and then we'd get a paddle by him. And so I always remember getting paddled almost every day that I was in school. That's when I started ditching as much as I could. And they started sending me to the principal's office after that. And it was really a demeanoring thing when you get paddled in front of somebody, the whole classmates and all that. So I didn't like being shamed out like that. So my ditching career really did save me from having so much shame. But then I went to the principal's office, and he would have a paddle that had 13 holes in it. And when he paddled me, we could hear it coming. So the two went to get paddled before me, and it was like 3rd grade. And before I had to go, I looked over on the right-hand side, and there was these books stacked up. And there was this book called Ranger Rick. You know, like Smokey the Bear, but this was Ranger Rick, and he was dressed in a forestry outfit. Anyway, I used to tell people Ranger Rick saved my ass, because I saw that little book and I figured, well, I'll put him down the back of my pants. And when I got paddled, it wouldn't hurt. And it did. It softened it. But I had to fake cry so that the principal would think that it hurt, so he wouldn't have to keep paddling me. So that was kind of like just younger time of my schooling, that I knew that I was different, and that I had to continue to maintain my identity. So I couldn't tell anybody who I was, and I couldn't defend myself. So I just had to let things be. So in that whole process of growing up that way and growing up to be in the community, I would start going into the mountains. every day after school, or if I ditched and there wasn't any old people around, I'd just walk up the river, walk up in the mountains and hang out with animals, hang out where I was comfortable. And I would do that a lot. And one time an old man told me, he says, "What do you do when you go up in the mountains like that? I see you walk in the bushes. And the bushes aren't much taller than you." And I tell him, "Well, I just go out there and play, you know." And he said, "Well, you better carry a big stick with you and sharpen it up on the end, make a point on it, because mountain lions and coyotes, well, someone that you're little enough that can grab you and take you off, and we never know you was gone." So I carried that stick, made a stick, and I carried it, protected myself. Never did get taken away. And so that was my protection. That was my education of how to be in the world that I lived in, with the animals and stuff. And I remember when I got to be like 12 or so, they had this Bible school. And again, I tried to just be with my friends, be with those other native kids that were my age. And so we'd go to this Bible school. They had Bible people come there, white people, and they would come to this, we call it a Quonset hut, a community building. And they'd come in there and they'd give us juice and cookies and milk. So I liked it because, you know, I didn't know, you know, we were poor because we ate good, seemed like, but we didn't have a lot of money. So when I used to go there, we'd get free cookies and free milk and drink. So we'd all go there and have milk and cookies. And then after they started teaching us about Jesus, and I would always see this coloring book they give us, and they want us to color it. And I always wondered what color to color Jesus, because he was already white. So he didn't know what color to color him, brown or whatever. So that kind of confused me. So we'd go through the study, and have to stay there all day. And then we'd be done, Bible study be done. And then after a while, we'd go eat the milk and cookies and stuff, and we wouldn't stay for the study, we'd leave. Because now I don't want to go to study, but I'll eat the milk and cookies. After a while, the young people that were teaching about this Christianity, they would tell me, they told us, they said, you can't eat milk and cookies before. You have to do the study before you can eat the milk and cookies. So me and my friend said, well, what do we want to learn, or we want to eat cookies? I said, well, if we got to do the study first, let's just leave. We don't need milk and cookies. So that was my choice back then of how to make a choice in life. Do I want to be forced to learn something that I don't want to learn because I'm hungry and I want something to eat and drink? Or do I just decide to go without something to eat and drink because I don't want to learn about that? So that's kind of like set me up for a long history of very hard decision making. And sometimes when I would go home and then hang with my buddies and stuff, they wouldn't really play fair and play fun. They always try to bully me and make me do things that they were doing and sometimes getting in trouble. And the old people said, don't be a bad boy, don't be like that, you know, think better and think good. So I couldn't force my friends my age to be like me, to think like me, and whenever I did say something, they always called me names. So I just quit hanging with them. I would go out in the mountains, hang by myself. And this helped me to preserve my identity, my purpose in life, who I was, what I thought, what I felt, my galactic knowledge that I could never tell anybody. And so it was very hard to live that life. But it wasn't impossible. I just had to put up with shame and ridicule and walking away from a fight, if not running from a fight, so that I can survive. And so as I did all that, I became more of the person that I am. But, you know, in my life, all those decisions I made, everything I've done, all I had to do was talk to spirit, talk to those that I remember, the galactic beings, talk to the animal, talk to the trees. And I always got my answer. I always felt like I had family around me. So I always made a good decision, even though I didn't have any people with me. And so as I got older and started really struggling because I couldn't make my mind up what to do next, because I wasn't in the future to be the person I was. I still had to wait until the future came, which I never knew when that was going to be. So I'd go around to elders and ask them all these questions, and pretty soon some of the elders that were 70s and 80s, they would tell me, "Oh my God, Art, you have to go talk to somebody older. You know, here I am, 12, 13 years old, and now they're telling me to go find somebody older. You're 80 and 90 years old." And so after I ran out of people to ask, one of the elders said, "Why don't you go talk to your great aunt? She knows everything." I said, "Aunt Frances?" And they said, "Yeah." So she's 12 miles away. So I ran to her place and sat with her and talked to her. And here it was, my great aunt, she was one of the people that was taken from her house by the boarding school people and just took out of her house at 7 years old. And they took her to Stewart, Nevada, which is a boarding school in Carson City. And she was there for 3 days. And she told me, she said they were mean to her. And all she could do was try to think when she was going to run away. So after the third day, she ran. And she'd run from Carson City all the way back to Woodford, California. And she'd run and she'd hide in the willows because she thought they were chasing her. And then she'd run some more, and then she'd hide in the willows. When she finally made it home, she told her parents what they did to her and how mean they were to her. So when the boarding people came, the government people came to get her from her parents to bring her back to her, the parents would hide her. They said, "She's not here." So my education that I was now going to be receiving from my great aunt was oral history of the original Washoe people, the last of our people's knowledge. And here I was going to receive it, but now I connected up with her. Now I was going to receive what it was I've been needing my whole life to connect to be able to fulfill more of my destiny. And as I asked her questions, she says, "Well," she said, "we really don't want to tell you any of this stuff because it's going to be really hard on you. You know, people don't remember this. They weren't taught. It was a really bad time. And so a lot of the families won't tell their children this to protect them so they won't be in harm's way." She said, "But since you asked so many questions, since you won't let it go," she said, "I'm going to tell you." So she told me a lot of the oral history and what happened to us and why we are in the state we are in. And so I was full of joy that after I get done talking to her for just those few questions, I ran home, run, walk, all the way 12 miles back home. And I wanted to tell people. But again, I can't tell anybody, so now my feeling of joy just had to be hindered again. So I wouldn't say anything, but I felt really good about it. So as I learned these things, I started to experience more about the things she told me about how we listen to Earth, how we were put on Earth this certain way to speak for those that don't speak for themselves, and how we retained all this knowledge and this experience, that I knew my purpose was real. I knew I was going to one day become a great practitioner of giving back something so great and something so important to all people. And my great aunt said, it's not just for us, it's for all people on Earth. So I always thought about that, why people always see it divided, why we're divided when, we're all human beings and we're all supposed to help each other. So this is where I began my lessons. And sometimes they wouldn't teach me, so at dinner time, or times we ate together, my grandfather and my grandmothers, they were like really high-level thinkers, So a lot of the different elders of the community would come to their house, and they would sit in a meeting in the house. And they wouldn't let the kids sit in there with them. They would chase them out. Every time we would all sit together and eat, well, if we were done eating, they would chase the kids out. And I said, I want to stay. No, you kids don't listen. You got to go. So we leave. So I made a plan. Next time they chase everybody out, I'm going to wait till everybody leaves the room, and I'm going to hide under the table. We had a big tablecloth that go over the sides of the table, big, long table. And so all the elders all showed up, and they were all sitting in there, and I'm sitting underneath the table, way in the back, right here, where they're against the wall, and the table went that way, so I could sit there with my legs crunched up. Everybody's feet was underneath there like that. And I would listen to them. And I heard what they said, why they didn't want young people in the room. Because we don't listen. We don't know how to be mindful. We don't know how to be quiet. And we call that word hakades. It means be quiet, be mindful, or shut the hell up. And so I learned that. And so I knew what to do, but I like sitting under the table because they tell you things that normally adults don't tell kids, but I got to hear it. Personal stuff. And one time, one of the old ladies was sitting so close to me, she moved her foot and kicked me like that. And she looked under the table like that, moved up, and she didn't see me. So I said, I'm not going to make it under the table no more. So I waited till they all left, and I crawled out from underneath the table, and one of the young cousins came running in, and she says, what are you doing under there? And I said, shh, be quiet, don't say nothing. So I actually got busted. So that was my last time under the table. So it's funny because after that, the next time they had a meeting at my grandma's house, I was sitting with my grandma. And being the oldest grandchild of 13 kids, all the other ones were younger than me. So as I was sitting there, they said, okay, all you kids got to leave. I sat next to my grandma. I said, I don't want to go. She said, you got to go, or your kids can't be in here like this. I said, I will. She said, you're going to be quiet? I said, yeah. So I got to sit with her. And the meeting went on. Everybody left, all the kids left. Only one there. And they were talking in the meeting, and they were telling each other stuff. Pretty soon my grandma would say, go get me some water. So some water. Went in there to get water for her. Pretty soon I look across the table, another elder says, give me some water. Okay. So I went and got them some water, go around the table and give them water, come back to my grandma and sit there and be quiet. And after I was there, 2 or 3 meetings later, I got to just move around and help the elders while they were meeting. Never see nothing. Then they would start talking about me. They say, young Eslam. That was my dad's name, but they would call me young Eslam. And they would say, young Eslam, he's a good boy. He knows how to be quiet, He said, he's gonna be good. And he says, he reminds us of the old people. So I used to always hear that. So I felt really proud. And then they talk about my family, on how great we were, and how great our family was at being responsible. How long for generations we were always looked at as very integral people. And so I felt so good about that because not many people have anything good to say about each other. A lot of people are just always talking about what their faults are. And that's what they always say, that natives are like that, but we're not. It came after the boarding school time when people started fighting over resources. We didn't have enough, so they would point fingers and make other people feel bad. So there was no love and no heart, like I was telling you, that people would be that way. So they would talk about me that way. So I always felt good. I could be in the meetings with them. And then one time, I was sitting in there, and one of my aunts, they were chasing everybody out, and I'm sitting there. Nobody said nothing to me. Pretty soon my aunt said, how come he gets to sit in here with you guys? They said, because he listens and you don't. So they had to leave. And I used to see the look I got from my aunts and people that had been told that when I was around, to leave me alone because I listen and they don't. They would look at me like, I'm going to get you one of these days. I'm going to beat you up, or I'm a bully or something. So that's why I would go in the mountains, because I didn't want to be bullied. I didn't want to be told that I was wrong for being respectful and wanting to be with old people and listen, and not be a young kid and just play and get in trouble and don't pay attention to be responsible until you got older. I always wondered why you had to get older to be responsible. And so I always tried to maintain that. So, that was my career of learning all these things that I've learned in my life, is to pay attention and to look at every sign that you have, and listen to the animals, and listen and watch what's going on. Messages. And so learning from nature is just as much good as learning from people. And so there wasn't many people left to give you good information. They would always try to take you away from what you want to know. And they think that just because they told you that their word is the strongest because they're adults and they're grown up and you should just listen to me. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. And I do, because my old people told me not to be that way, and now you're telling me that I have to be the way you are when you don't even know what they said. So it's been real contradictory in my life to make older people feel good about me listening to them while I wasn't. So I would go in the mountains and live. So most of my life I've lived in the mountains. And that saved me from changing who I was. But for so many years being alone, and then over the years, by the time I hit 21, 22, or right before 21, a lot of the old people were dying off. And I hardly had any friends left, nobody that I really believed in. There were some elders left that did know things, but they were more secretive because they really didn't want to share their information with me. Not like the old people. So I was just mindful of them, just let them be who they are. I knew what I knew, and I know what I'm going to do one day. So that would just be me. So I'd go in the mountains. And when you're a young teenager, and I ditched all them years in school, sometimes I would hang with my buddies, and people would drink, and they would party, and I wanted to hang with them. So I'd hang with them. Pretty soon I got influenced. I'd drink with them, or I'd smoke weed with them or something, and I enjoyed that because I was around people, even though I wasn't like them. And when I did, after so many years, you start to forget who you are. Forget your heart, forget that you're supposed to be a good person and not a person that's living unconsciously. So it was real hard for me to maintain who I was supposed to be someday, an integral person. So now I'm by me telling people not who I am and being this way, now they believe I'm that way and I'm not this way. So most people say, you weren't like that, you're not like that, my whole life. And inside I know I'm that person, and I want to scream out and tell them, I'm not like that, I just can't tell you who I am. And by all these years going by, I realized, when I hung with those people drinking, and when I hung around those people doing drugs, they could have poisoned me. They could have killed me. I've even had people try to take me out in the mountains and kill me, but I saw them when they were doing what they were doing, and I would separate from them before we got to the place where they were going to get rid of me. And they'd say, hey, where are you going? Get back here. I said, no, I'm going to go. We'll see you guys later. And I didn't realize, and I think about it nowadays, how I put myself in very bad positions. I could have been killed. I could have been abducted. Anything could have happened because I wasn't being conscious. But I was conscious at listening to nature. So something always told me to be safe. So I was drinking and doing that, not making school. When I was 20 years old, I kept, all right, I'm going to be 21. I'm going to go buy beer for my buddies, and I can hang with them, and they'll like me, because I can do stuff for them that they can't do because I'm 21 now. When I turned 21, Spirit told me, quit drinking. So I quit drinking cold turkey. And all them people that I thought were my friends, they didn't want to be around me. They didn't like hanging with me because I didn't drink. Even people said, I'm not going to listen to him. He's got nothing to say to me because I'm the only one that's not drunk. I'm the only one that's not high. I know what's going on. So you guys can fight and you can make trouble with each other unconsciously because of drunk talk or gossip. But if you ask me, I'll tell you who started this and where it came from. So anyway, it just became more and more segregated from the crowd. And so it kept me more alone. And I've always been a loner my whole life, but I've been a very social person. I've always wanted to be around people that are conscious and that have knowledge. And so I've become very knowledgeable by listening to people with knowledge. And so after I quit drinking, I started going to spiritual gatherings with different tribes and trying to support them. And I did really well learning all that and listening to spirit. And sometimes an owl would fly. I'm going somewhere, and the owl would all of a sudden show up and talk to me, and he would tell me, "Don't go there." And I'm going, "But I'm dressed." So I couldn't go. Next day, after I didn't go that place, people would say, "Man, what happened? Where were you? You were supposed to be there." I said, "Well, I couldn't make it." They said, "You missed out, man. This bad stuff happened. All this stuff happened. I could have been in harm's way again." But nature, owls, hawks, mice, coyotes, they all got some message to tell you. We're family. And so I was always grateful to have insight of them kind of things. And so all my years I've been doing this. That's my history of my identity of the person I am. I'm Washishu, which means all the people. Land, animal, air, water, plant, and beings being human on earth. I'm part of a family. That's what Washishu means. And when people call us Washo, it singularizes us, and so we only speak for ourselves. We don't listen to nobody else. So now we only have one thing on our mind, and what's for me? What do I get? But I'm Washishu. What do we get? What's best for all of us? And so that's my message in life on earth, is to speak on behalf of those that can't speak for themselves. And I notice that really sets me apart now in this world today, because tribal leaders and tribal people that are now in this corporate world, they don't think that they have to know this traditional knowledge, this oral history. They think they can just get away with it and say, "Well, I learned the white man's way, and I know I've been to college, and I'm smarter than you, and I don't have to listen to you." Like one of my aunts told me one time, she said, "Yeah, Mom taught you everything, didn't teach us nothing." I said, "Well, sit down and I'll tell you." She says, "You're not going to teach me nothing." And she's got a master's in education. She's a teacher. So this is how we've separated ourselves from a physical world and living with human beings that think they're in charge, and then living with the spiritual world and being human, living with our responsibility of how to care for earth and care for animals and care for each other. That's to continue to have the heart. This world with just the people, you have no heart. And that's what I'm here to do in my life, is to bring the heart back to the circle, bring the people back to the circle. So that's where, in my life, that's where the message comes from. And so, like I said, this whole story that I'm laying out, I'm glad I don't smoke no more, and I'm glad I don't drink no more, because my mind is articulately connected to who I am. And I'm really grateful to be able to do this video, because if I die or something happens, I want people to know that when we're born, we're all given a purpose in life. And if we can just remember what that purpose is, then we would be good beings, being human on earth, but we would have somebody responsible to care for those that can't speak for themselves, which we see today. Our world is dying. Water is being poisoned, air is being poisoned, trees are being cut down, animals being shut out. We forgot about our purpose in life, what we're supposed to be doing here on earth. And so I want to be a representation of that, in which I was born, in which I went to sleep in the 1700s to save, and to one day wake up. And so now here I am in this day. I've survived. I made it. And in 2005, I got the Spirit to tell me it's time for you to wake up. It's time for you to be you. And when it said that, I said, who? Who's me? I don't remember who that person was. I've been faking people out for so long to not know who I am, that now that I can be who I am, I forgot who that was that I was supposed to be. I didn't practice. So from 2005 to 2017, I've had to relearn who I am. But I've been blessed in many ways that I've always been given teachers. Someone special in the group I would end up sitting in the same place with, or I'd go to a meeting, big gathering, talking to somebody outside. Pretty soon the big meeting happens. There's 500 people in there. And I go sit down, and the person I was talking to happened to be the leader of the whole thing. So now here I am sitting with the leader, and I've been blessed that way with some very special people on earth that I know that when I'm around places that it's the kind of person I am. It's a person I am to know other people like me, and so there's a certain return of beings on earth that are going to return and bring back the soul identity of the true human being, or the true being human on earth, and our role of protecting the earth and taking care of the earth and teaching each other and teaching the kids what a good example is going to return. And so when the old people said, don't be yourself and tell the future, don't tell anybody, and wait. And I said, when's that going to be? They said, you'll know. And 2005 was when I should have known, because it told me to wake up. But it took me 12 years to relearn to not be that I was faking people out, to the part where now, 2017 to 2023, I'm almost completely myself as I was when I was born, because I stood firm, stood vigilant to what my heart was saying, and what my brain and my heart together would combine and know what to do. Because they say there's a pineal gland in our brain, and it's like an antenna. We receive messages from heaven, and it comes into our pineal gland, and then it goes to our heart, because physically we live on earth, so we need to make decisions on earth. So as the pineal gland gives a message, goes in my heart, then they combine, and then I have these right here to act. Choices, decisions. So now I make choices and decisions based on listening to the Spirit, and I'm always in the right place at the right time. Just like my brother here doing this video for us, capturing this, he's blessed because he's like me. We end up someplace where we need to be at that time in order for us to help each other to be what it is that needs to be for humanity. Because humans have created the first genocide on earth by our own hand, because we want to live unconsciously. Well, those of us that are conscious, we need to now rise up together and help each other to become conscious and make conscious decisions. As traditional council heart leadership, just as the people in the world today are corporate leaders without a heart, but yet they make decisions based on where everybody's going, we need to combine the information from two sides so that we can be a part of a decision that's going to be best for all of us. And just be conscious while we're doing it. And so my story that I had to tell about all these things that had happened to me was just to bring everybody up to speed about why I am and who it is that I am and why I'm here. But then we get to the nuts and bolts of what it is that I've done and why I'm here. The work that I've done, I was almost, I call it blackballed. when you start doing stuff against the corporate structure, people don't like it, so they'll use everything in their power to stop you. Lawyers and laws and all this. But for me, I know there's something that I can do. So I prayed, and I met up with this other man, and he was in his 80s, and he helped me to write a book. It's a technical brief, and the technical brief is called Indigenous Identity Theft and Fraud. It's 480 pages thick, and it has all the information that had already happened on Earth up to 2,000 years ago. The intrusions upon all human beings. Some cultures have been taken away from their culture 2,000 years ago on intrusions. My people only 280 years. See, so there's a big difference in remembering your culture and not having a clue of what your culture had been. And so for me, when I think about it, when people say cultural appropriation, I think it's very inappropriate for people to say that. Because how is a person that's been away from their culture for 2,000 years supposed to remember their culture? Or even how to listen to spirit, or how to use a feather, or how to practice a drum, or how to rattle a rattle. We've had all these things. And if people are doing that consciously with respect to the people that had before them and learning these things, then that's great. Because now you can learn how, and the Spirit's going to talk to you like it talked to me. And it's going to talk to you in your language. It's going to bring your DNA and your cultural identity back to you. And there's an example of that. One of my brothers, his name's Robert Whitemountain. He's up in Lakota country, and he's telling a story about his Celtic brother that he was hanging with. And they were hanging together, and pretty soon the Celtic brother tells the Lakota brother, "Hey, I want to learn my culture." And Robert, he's Lakota, he says, "Well, I'm not Celtic." He says, "But we can probably go to the sweat lodge, and we purify you, and then you can talk to the spirit." So they went to the sweat lodge, and they purified themselves in the sweat lodge. He said the first time he got clean. The second time he went to the sweat lodge with them, he got a song. And the Celtic brother told Robert, "What does the song mean?" And Robert's being Lakota, he says, "Well, I'm not Celtic." He said, "I don't know." He said, "Do you have any family back home, any elders?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I have an 80-year-old uncle back in Ireland or Scotland or wherever the Celtics come from, you know." And he said, "Well, call him up, put him on speaker and sing the song for him." So the Celtic brother did. He called his uncle up and he says, "Hey, uncle, I have a song. I'm going to sing it for you. I want to know if you recognize it." And so the uncle was listening, and so the Celtic brother sang the song. And after he was done, his uncle said, "Where did you learn that song?" He said, "That's an old Celtic ceremonial song." And this guy was in South Dakota, and he wasn't back home. So his DNA, his identity, who he was in his bloodline, was what he was listening to when he received the song. Spirit helpers of his people. So we don't have to think that we're learning from a culture here that we have to become that. We're just learning a culture here so we can remind us of who we are from where we came from. And so this is why I say it's inappropriate for anybody to try to control or to claim that nobody doesn't have a right to learn to listen to Spirit again. That's our job on earth, is to help each other remember who we are, learn who our heart is. And so just as that story I'm telling you, this is many stories in my life that I've always had an example of how the heart works and how the head works. America works in its head. The native people and the original indigenous people of the earth work with our heart. So we all know what we need to be doing in order to accomplish that. So all this stuff that's going on now, somebody needed to do something in order for us to understand what to do, both in a spiritual way and a physical way. And so the laws on earth, those things that are happening, need to be understood. Those things as spiritual identity and belief needs to be understood. So that's why we created the document Indigenous Identity, Theft, and Fraud, which is a book that's 480 pages thick, that's got all the laws that have happened to all indigenous people for 2,000 years, as well as all the things that happened to the native people in North Central South America here. And we compiled it as a technical brief. And then as we started creating this document since 2005, but the guy I worked with has been doing it since the early 60s into the 80s, until a lot of the chiefs died and he had nobody else to work with. He wasn't native, he was non-native. And so, but he was very intelligent, very smart. And he had all this information, like the Columbia fishing wars, with Washington and Oregon, all that fishing wars with the salmon, all their rights. He was involved with all of that, with the chiefs there. And when they all died off, he had nobody to work with. And for me, in 2000, I started trying to go to Lake Tahoe and try to figure out the problems that was happening there, because my old people said they were having dreams. And so they sent me up there to find out. So when I did, I upset the tribal government, and they blackballed me to say I don't have no right to speak to these people because they're the agency of government-to-government relations, which is a lie. They didn't tell anybody that this business, I own the Washoe Tribe of Nevada, California. The Washoe Tribe of Nevada, California is trying to say that they speak on my behalf, and they don't have to listen to me. Well, I'm a spiritual being. They're a business. There's a difference. And so as they blackballed me, and I couldn't work with the agencies, I prayed. And that's where I ended up meeting up with William Blair, the partner that wrote the book with. And when we did this document in this book, he saved me. He saved what it was I was doing, who it was that I am. But he also told me, he says, I've been waiting since 1982 for somebody like you. He said, everything that you're doing is exactly what them chiefs were doing back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And he says, by you stepping up and like what you're doing now, we can bring all that work that we did from 82 to 2005. And that's what we did. We brought this document up to speed. I filled in all the blanks of what he didn't have because he wasn't a native to have to deal with these situations like this. And he was a government man at the time. And when he retired, those people that he worked with told him, and when he told them what he was doing, working with me, he told them, they said, what are you working with those Indians for? They don't have any money. And he looked at them and he said, because their interest is the same as ours. And I was so grateful for him because he came into my life in a time that was probably going to be my lowest. Because to blackball me and tell me I'm a bad guy and I don't know what I'm talking about and to turn your head away from me, people listen to this stuff. And pretty soon they don't treat you with the shit because the government's smarter. These leaders that are supposed to be leaders are smarter because they got the job. But I'm smart, I'm intelligent, and I know what I know. I'm not claiming to be anything, but I'm not going to let nobody tell me that I don't know what I know. And I do have history to prove it, but I don't have to prove anything. I just have to give you what I have to put my participation in there to help those that are doing the same thing themselves, to increase our knowledge, to know what it is we need to do with a solution or an answer or a remedy today. And so when he came into my life, he brought all this information there to us and to me, and we filled these blanks of the identity of the native people in the dealings with the intrusions that the government had done to us Native people, getting rid of our traditional leaders, now calling corporate leaders traditional corporate leaders, which they're none of them practice culture, because if they did, they wouldn't be telling me that I can't speak. Corporate leaders should understand they can speak business all you can, and you better be good, because if you don't know what you're talking about, you shouldn't be talking. Just like me. I don't know business as much as I should, so I'm not going to speak over them. But I do know my tradition and my culture and my identity and my oral history, and I listen to the spirits. So I do know what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to let somebody tell me I don't know. But I'm not going to argue with them. I'm just going to try to be, like in this case, the best place I can be in order to share this information so that those of you out there know there's a document that you can get, that you can read all on your own. You decide what you want to do with your next decision, with your next choice. But at least you'll know through this technical brief of everything that the Bar Association has done, the United Nations has done, Department of Defense, Department of Justice, the United States, tribal governments. It's all in there. Because we've done paperwork to try to support ourselves and get support from the government, from tribal governments, tribal leaders, and all we're doing is teaching them, and then they do something else to obstruct us from what we just did when they said, you're required to do this, so we did. Now all of a sudden they have another answer to why we can't do it that way, that we have to do more. So they're not really wanting to learn to be better. They're learning to stop you, to make it look like they're the ones that are doing it. So we have to listen to them, which I call AI, American Agenda, Artificial Identity, and that's why we're American Indian. I like to say the AI is authentic identity and authentic integrity. So why isn't anybody using AI in that form instead of saying AI is just artificial intelligence? You know, they're mixing us all up and not giving us the information so that we can prescribe a better meaning of life to ourselves, to help ourselves become a better being human on earth, so we can at least advance, because that's why we're all given life on earth, so that we can advance being on earth in love, not hate and separation and racism and you know, the dark side, I call it. You know, you have to live in the light in order to be happy, to be healthy, to have joy and happiness. And that's what we did when people first came here to this earth, to our continent especially. You know, most people don't know this, but when Columbus got here, they said, yeah, Columbus, when he crashed on the rock over there in the east, when he got out and he would deal with the people over there, that he was looking for India. That's why they called us Indians. You know, that's not true. Columbus didn't say that. Because in Columbus's journal that he sent back to Europe, he wrote in his journal that the native people on this continent are Indio. And Indio means one with God. So when we're talking about artificial identity, intelligence, artificial or American identity, they have to make a story up in order to be justified on why they killed a people that were one with God. And so by them calling us Indian, they had to make up this other guy called the cowboy. And you know why they call the cowboy a cowboy and not a cowman? Because a cowboy is someone that didn't have a rites of passage. And so he can continue to be a boy his whole life and make decisions not based on responsibility, accuracy of integrity. And so when I say these things this way, it just makes so much sense to me of why our country is having such a hard time, is because we've gotten away from our traditional values, our identity of what we've learned on earth. And one major one was our rites of passage. every being on earth is a child at one time. But at some point in your life, you have to grow up. And when you do, those that are grown up already recognize that. And now you need to be initiated into that society. You're no longer a boy, you're a man. You're no longer a girl, you're a woman. And there comes responsibility to that. A lot of these people that are making decisions, that are billionaires and are politicians, they're just boys because they're making decisions and they think they can get away with being unintegral and still get away with that. When a real true being on earth knows that when you've been initiated from a boy to a man, you're no longer a boy. Live up to being a man. When you're a woman, you need to be initiated into the woman society, so now you can be a woman. And now we can live a balanced life. And so this is what we need to teach our younger generations nowadays, of how to do that, so they can teach their kids that, so they can teach their families how to create what I call America's new lineage. America needs to let go of the past, of what they did, of what their forefathers did. Rape, pillage, steal, lie. And they need to create a new lineage for themselves, one that's integral, with culture and belief, and God included, with the animals and the spirit included, and all beings on earth. Asians, blacks, whites, native. We're all one family here. And we're not supposed to be living on earth homeless and hungry and call that a problem. It's not a problem. That's what people want to say, so they can try to figure out a solution while we spend money and give people jobs and all that. Being homeless and hungry is because we have classes. We have different callers, different levels of people on earth. Some got money, some don't. Well, you know, back when the natives had this land, they was never homeless and hungry, because you can go to anybody's territory and you would get fed and you'd have a place to stay. All you had to do was have respect for that person's, those people's ways, you know. Like they would say, I used to hear this saying, do as the Romans do. Well, if I was in Rome, I probably would, because I don't want to go out of context of the way they believe. But if Rome was over here, they're Washishu, and they should respect that way. And so, me being in America and being in traditional native land, America needs to get out of this conditioning of saying, we're in America, we can do whatever we want. No, you can't. The native people of this continent had rules, and we lived by those rules from spirit. And the very first thing we were told, before we had hands and feet, we were brought here to earth. And before we had hands and feet, spirits and the animals and plants told us, if we give you hands and feet, before you put your very first footprint on this ground, you promise that if you were ever to leave, you would leave this place how you found it. This is what I live by. Looks like I'm going to be coming back a few more lives, because we've created such a mess on earth that it ain't going to take one lifetime to do it now. So for all of us and all of the people of the world, you know, you have to be conscious of this, that we've made a mess of our time being on earth because we've lived too unconscious for too long. And a lot of it was, well, forced on us. But now we're in a new time, and it's time for us to reconstruct our identity on earth and reevaluate the decisions we're making, so that we can start to live true to ourselves, true to the Indio identity that the original people had on this earth. When I look at my own people, the native people that are in my territory, you know, we don't believe in ourselves anymore, and we believe that we've been conquered and we can live any way we want, and we live underneath America's identity, to where we trash our own place. We don't like each other. We don't care what the animals and the air and the water is. we believe somebody's going to take care of it for us. That's all of our responsibility, each one of us. And so it's going to take a lot of work for us to get to that point, but it's not impossible. We just need to learn to sing our songs, hold hands in round dance, and be one family. And I believe that if we were to create elder tribunals in each state, in each county, in each village, that the elder tribunal will give us guidance on what decisions we should make for ourselves, and not let one country tell every community the way it has to live and not know what we have to deal with, the circumstances that we're in. It's all different in every part of the territory, every part of the world, every part of the country. So those elders in those communities need to be empowered. And I have a brother also, like Robert White Mountain. That's what we have here, this bracelet I have. It's these different colors. Robert White Mountain created this. It's called Home Team, Honor Our Mother Earth Team. And we could franchise it. He's going to franchise it to where we create chapters all over the world that everybody takes care of themselves, mind, body, and soul. And so if we can figure these things out, we'll be okay. And Jose Munoz, the Mayan timekeeper out of Guatemala, he's up here helping to create plans in North America. And what he's doing now is we created what is called Indigifest. And 1/1, 2/2, 3/3, 4/4, 5/5 of every month in the year, all the way to 12/12, is go to these different parts of the land and have elder panels. Indigenous people on these panels, some native or some multi-natives, international natives, with indigenous people from every nationality, but elders with experience. And as they sit on this panel, we ask them questions. And for example, in LA, we had 9 elders sit on this panel. I was the youngest one, being 62, and then the others being 70, 80s, and 90s. We all sat on this panel, and Jose asked us questions. He had 33 questions to ask us. And he asked 3 questions, and it took us 7 hours to answer with us 9 elders. And the profound part about this message that Jose is doing is giving the elders a chance to speak again, to know that your voice is important and your experience is important. And what you have to say is very pertinent to what it is that we have to have as an example for others to see. So in this elder panel, like I said, there was 9 of us, me being the youngest. All these elders on this side of me spoke. They tried to hand me the microphone. I said, I'm not the oldest. You need to listen to the other elders first. So I went to this side. All the elders spoke. They were all done. So I got to speak. And as soon as I started to speak my truth, my knowledge, my understanding, I brought up some subjects that the one elder on this side, 90 years old, said, I got more to say. They cut me off, interrupted me. But I didn't take it personal. I know they have lots to say, but we've all been subdued to thinking that we can't say what we want to say because someone's going to cut us off, or if we say something, something's going to happen to us. I know that of them. I know that in my history of my elders. So I let them talk. And the old lady talked, and she said a whole bunch of more, very, very powerful. Pretty soon she said, well, that's all I got to say. I said, okay, I get the mic back. So I started answering another question. Another elder over here cut me off because I reminded them of something else. So I let them talk. And I got the microphone back, and I started talking again, and then one other elder cut me off and said they had more to say. So I appreciate what they had said and how they had shared what they shared, even though I know and you know and we all know that when you cut someone off, that's rude. I didn't take it personal. I didn't take it as being rude. I took it as what Jose said. Our elders in this country have been cut off too long. We've been shut down too much, that we need to hear what they have to say. And if we keep doing these elder panels all over the country, and every community, go to this community, that community, Canada, South America, all over the United States, even abroad into other countries, that we can hear exactly what the elders have to say. And I bet you we're going to learn a lot. I bet you we're going to find out that what we really want in life is what the elders want. And some of the things we're doing, somebody should tell us we shouldn't be doing that. Because we as younger generation, even though we do something we shouldn't, nobody's stopping us. And now we don't even listen to them. So now we've gone in life without having any discipline. And we really do need discipline for us to be able to manage ourselves. But we need to put our role models back into the place of where they are useful, valuable, and strong again. And so it just makes so much sense to me that my path that I've taken in creating this document and providing the next generations with a reference book, you know, that you can read and you can observe yourself, that now we have a paper trail that isn't forgotten, that the oral history can actually return to the families from this point on. Wherever you start, that's where you begin. Let go of those things you have no control of and begin where you do have control of our life, and begin that for your families, begin that for your communities, begin that for your states, begin that for our country, so that we can be a united people. Like they say, United States is united. Well, we're sure not united these days. I hear lots of people all talking about having a revolution. Why don't we talk about evolution? You know, so that we all can advance, because that's what we're doing here on earth. We're here to advance by having a place to practice of what we think we know and what we've learned to do. You know, so there's so much more to be told, so much more to be shared. I'm at this gathering down here in Las Vegas, and I go to a lot of these things sometimes just because I want to hear what people are saying. And in this group here, it's an elder gathering, and a lot of the elders really do want to learn more because they're so behind, and that the corporate structures are moving ahead with services and money. And a lot of crooks are involved in our tribal governments now, you know, and I hate to say it that way, but, you know, somebody that steals from you and doesn't tell you the truth and ignores you, that's a crook. And for Native people, we don't have crooks in our identity, in our culture, because that's something that's going to make you go backwards. We need to live in the heart, live with honesty and live with integrity, so that when elders ask questions, like this gathering here, they're answering questions to the elders, but they're not slowing down enough to answer them fully. This elder told me, he said, I asked a question in this gathering because we brought this gathering together to find out information. And I asked a question and they told me an answer, but they moved on. And he said, I didn't really get what they were saying, but now they never did, so they never did really answer my question. And so for me, being here at this gathering, it was just great intel for me to realize that there is something really important for us to really realize here, is that we're not slowed down enough to allow the elders to catch up. And the elders of our country aren't supporting tribal governments because we don't know what you're up to. We just know there's been so much distrust in the federal government, American government for so long, is we think our tribal governments are following that same lead. because we don't know what they're doing. We see them with new cars and jobs and living good, but we're all poor. We don't have money, we don't have resources. A lot of these elders that are here, their house is decrepit and falling apart, and nobody wants to listen to them. But they still want to be a participant. And so if we can just allow ourselves to find the place that we can all meet halfway. Traditional people, corporate, business people. Because I see it this way in my tribe. My tribe, business, Washoe Tribe in Nevada, California, they're a business and they have a council, a business council. This business council wants to say they make decisions on everything that happens in my life, my family's life, my land. They're not traditional, they're just business people. Traditional people, traditional leadership is right here. We have a heart and a soul. This business doesn't have a heart and soul because they follow American policies and procedures to where those policies and procedures provide us with services. The heart of the traditional people provide us with the knowledge which includes land, animal, air, water, and plant, and the heart of the living. So if those two parties can come together to make decisions, that's good. But as the business council is now trying to say it speaks on behalf of culture and traditions, and me as a traditional person knowing my culture and traditions and oral history and being ignored and not even being spoken to this day, of all the work I've done, of everything that I've done for my tribe, my people, my families, that now I'm an example for what it is I'm saying. I'm not telling you this because somebody told me this. I'm telling you this because I'm a victim in this system that says it's taking care of me. And so I don't want to be a victim. I want to be someone that's going to be able to help. And I believe I can help. I believe I have some input. So if I could just get the time to talk, and I don't never get a chance to talk because they say, my tribal operation says, oh, we speak on behalf of you elders. And so I just, I don't see how our elders are being disregarded and not heard, and they're poor and they're lonely and they don't have any input in our operations, and our business council wants to say, oh, we'll take care of everybody. And they lie to the agencies and the government and anybody that asks, oh, are you taking care of your people? Oh yeah, we're taking care of our people. They're not. Because they're just ignorant to knowing that you can't lie to somebody when there's somebody here that can tell you the truth. I have never been talked to. I have never been consulted with. So don't say that I agree with you when I don't.
So in your tribe, you think your culture and your tradition is fading away?
It's not just fading away, it's kind of like going to sleep. And just for example, the pine nuts that I showed you, the pinyon pine. We go to different tribes in, that have pine nuts in their land. And these pine nuts are a staple crop of ours that help us to survive in the winter. And when we gather them, we have enough to supply us until spring, because back in the old days we didn't have stores and all that. And these pine nuts we have are so much protein in them that you can eat 6 of them a day and drink water and survive in the very end of the spring months, or the late winter, early spring, until the snow breaks. Then you can go out and gather again. That they're very important. And so what we're supposed to do as beings, being human on earth, the tradition is, and our cultural identity is, we're supposed to have a round dance and pray for the pine nuts before we go gather. Ceremony. And this, when you pray for the pine nuts, you're praying for next year's pine nuts, not this year's. So when you pray, you don't get your prayers till next year. So we get into a cycle. We Washoe haven't had our ceremonies for a few years. Well, once in a while, someone will try to have a dance, and that's good. But we have to do it as a community, as a family, as a body of people, like we did in the old days. And we all pray together and we create intention. And that's what's powerful about beings being human on earth. We don't know that we have galactic power like the Creator. Creator gave us life, but they gave us power. But we got to know how to use it. And intention is one of those gifts. And so our intention now to pray for our pinettes is missing. All of our pinette areas in our territory are burning up. We don't have hardly any pinette areas in our local area because the local corporation is now saying it has culture and traditions, but yet it doesn't support gatherings or ceremony. But the tribe over the hill, the Paiute people, both north and south, they have their ceremonies. So where do we pick our pinettes? In their territory. Because they pray for their territory. They pray for their pinettes to have their ceremony every year. Some of our people in our Washoe territory go to the pinette dance in Schurz and the Paiute areas to have ceremony with them. And so that makes them feel like they're having ceremony. But we have to do it in our area. So as you're asking me the question about if our culture and traditions is dying out, no, it's just going to sleep. Hopefully what I'm saying here on this tape, hopefully the document that we created about cultural identity, it makes sense to the next generations that you have to be that person for that to exist. So as we practice culture and traditions, so does our way of life become more fulfilling, more abundant. Right now we don't have abundance because we're not sticking together. We're not doing things that it takes a family to make our prayers strong, to make our intentions strong. So the Creator and the animals and everybody are spoken within it, and that we're doing it as a unit, and not just individuals saying, well, I do it. Well, you can do it all you want, but we need to do it together. So hopefully we don't go to sleep, but it's on its way to going to sleep if we don't recognize our participation, our responsibility, our way of life, and be an example for the kids to know what to do. Because we're always telling the kids and the teenagers, do this, do that. Well, if we're not a good example, how is the kids going to take that as being serious? Well, if you don't do it, why should I? Well, I'm working and I got to do this and I got to provide for you, but I want a better life for you. Well, how come you don't get along with those other people? Well, we don't like those. So those younger generation hear that and see that, so they act the same way. And they don't even know why. A lot of this old fighting against each other is because of survival. In my case, our families were killed off in 1859. When the Europeans came to our land, they said, take us to your leader. And so the men stood up and said, I'm the leader. Because you think that we were going to tell them that the leader was the women? So they killed all our men off in Washoe country. We were only left with women, children, and old people. But the leaders survived, and that was the women. So we preserved our culture and our identity. But the women's been compromised in America because you know how America treats women. The women are second class. But to Native people, the women are the matriarchal leadership. The women are the ones that choose us men to be leaders because they see us with integrity. And if we don't have integrity, they can take us out of office too and not be a leader. So it's not about strength. It's not about warrior. Warriors and strength had to come with discipline. And that's what came with the women. The true democracy in this country is carried by the women. You can see that in the animal kingdom. You see a herd of deer. You see all the does, and you see the bucks. Bucks got big horns. And everybody's going, look, that's the leader. He's big and strong. He's got horns. He fights off the wolves. You know, he's the toughest one. You know, that buck, if he gets an ego and he's standing around looking all good, getting his picture taken, he better pay attention because the herd might walk off without him, which are the women going for where the food's at and where the shelter's at and where the best place for the families to be. So we got to start to look at our lives more seriously, and when we want to be the example of where we actually stand in the family structure, our responsibility and our discipline. So
Definitely. I feel it. You speak from the heart. Definitely. And then, Mr. Art, George, I want to thank you. Thank you for definitely coming out here and speaking. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for doing this. You know, I'm grateful for you because I believe that now I've given up a lot of information that can allow maybe the next generation of young men can realize if they were born with something important, stand to it, you know, but remember, you know, we're all here together, and if we could do something that's going to make all of our lives better, make the women feel protected and provided for, then the children and the younger generation can get back on track, and then we can actually start to thrive and be in abundance, but we can ensure that the next generations of land, animal, air, water, and plant is going to survive.